Hey guys, Sai here, January 6th, 2026. In 2007, Venezuela did something almost no country had ever done. Paid off the IMF early and walked away. 19 years later, the US invaded and seized over $60 billion in assets. But this wasn't about drugs, democracy, or dictatorships. This was a punishment. April 2007, Hugo Chavez paid off nearly $3 billion to the IMF and World Bank 5 years ahead of schedule. He withdrew Venezuela completely and said, and I quote, "We don't owe a cent to either the IMF or the World Bank." Venezuela had its hands tied, but not anymore. He calls them that prison and starts building a Bank of the South as an alternative. He proved to developing nations that escaping the IMF and World Bank were possible, but Washington had other designs. Fast forward to 2014, oil prices crash and Venezuela's economy struggles. 2017, Trump imposes sanctions that ban Venezuela from restructuring its debt, the normal legal process every country uses to avoid default. He bans them from accessing new credit and cuts them off completely. November 2017, Venezuela ends up defaulting, not because they wanted to, but because Trump made it illegal and impossible to avoid default. Then, they frame it as Venezuela being corrupt and untrustworthy. December 2018, Venezuela tries to access $2 billion in gold reserves stored in the Bank of England. They're desperate at this point. January 2019, the Bank of England refuses. Why? Because U.S. officials Bolton and Pompeo lobbied the UK to freeze it. A UK Foreign Office minister wrote this in his diary. Quote, "Hunt was delighted to help with Washington's destabilization campaign in Venezuela." End quote. So, Venezuela decides to operate in something the U.S. can't freeze. Bitcoin. 2018 to 2020, they converted $2 billion in gold to Bitcoin at around $5,000 per coin. 2023 to 2025, Venezuela takes oil payments in Tether and converts it to Bitcoin. The total accumulated is 600,000 Bitcoin, worth $60 to $67 billion today. It's the only asset class outside of US and UK control. 2024, Venezuela joins BRICS and starts selling its oil to China in yuan, not dollars, completely escaping the Western financial system. January 2nd, 2026, Venezuela wins a court appeal to get their $2 billion in gold back from the Bank of England. January 3rd, 2026, literally 24 hours later, the US military invades Venezuela and captures President Maduro. Trump immediately announces, "We're going to run the country, take the oil, the minerals," and they've announced that Stephen Miller is going down there to run things, all out in the open. Let's be clear about what's being taken. Gold, $2 billion frozen in London since 2019, 60 to 67 billion. Maduro was photographed blindfolded with noise-canceling headphones. That's sensory deprivation torture. One can only imagine how they're going to extract the private keys to that Bitcoin. Oil reserves valued at $17+ trillion. Trump said U.S. companies are taking over, and they're going to satisfy their debts with that oil. Chinese loans, $60 billion owed to China. The U.S. says they're odious or dirty debt and won't be paid. This is the largest asset seizure in human history. So let's review. In 2007, Venezuela escaped the IMF, proving that it was possible. 2017, they were forced into default. 2019, their gold assets are frozen by the Bank of England. 2025, Venezuela built a Bitcoin reserve of over 600,000 Bitcoin and joined BRICS. January 2nd, 2026, Venezuela finally won its court case for their gold from the Bank of England, and 24 hours later, January 3rd, 2026, the U.S. invaded Venezuela. 19 years, systematically destroying Venezuela for one reason. They left the system. This wasn't law enforcement. This was a message to every developing nation. You can't win, and you can't break free. Ever. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.